I couldn't understand you. I was like, what? You go, I've gone to OT school. I go, what do you mean? I just got a call and they told me I'm accepted.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Arwen. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and most recently I have been documenting my experiences with telehealth and working from home. And today I thought I would start a new segment, title unknown, something along the lines of OT story time, tales of an OT, or OT chronicles. I want this to be a way to document my experiences and time in OT school and share those with you. And I wanted to start today by sharing the story of how I found out about OT and how I got into occupational therapy school. Now, let me just preface this by saying I really wanted to share this story because I know this is where a lot of you are right now that are watching my videos. I was where you are 10 years ago, crazy enough. I was in that moment where you feel like you have to make a decision of what you're going to do for the rest of your life, which is so overwhelming. You feel like you have to make a decision and stick with that and pursue that, and that's what you're going to do for the next 50 years. And that's scary. That's overwhelming. I think the younger generation, the generation behind myself, is really struggling with that and feeling very lost. So I did want to share this story and let you know that I was there, which is crazy, again, like I said, 10 years ago. But that's also why I decided to make these videos, so that you might have a little bit more guidance than I did. There was definitely no one talking about or vlogging or sharing their experiences as an OT that I knew about 10 years ago. So to start, I will say that most people, I will say that many people that I have worked with, encountered, therapists, they usually have a intriguing or interesting emotional backstory as to how they found out about occupational therapy. Usually it'll be a family member had an experience or an accident, and they had an interaction with an OT. Mine is not that. Mine is not that. It is neither exciting or intriguing, but I feel like it is realistic, and I feel like it is the way that many people find out about OT and get into the profession. So that's why I wanted to share that with you today. That is not to say that I'm not any better or worse of a therapist, because I wasn't planning my entire life or since high school and pursuing this career. But this is just my story. So I was on the hunt for the perfect profession. I'm not gonna lie. So I was majoring in psychology. Well, let me preface by saying, I took the slow route. So I actually graduated from high school a semester early. I would have been class of 2007, but I graduated in 2006. Why? I don't know. I was just ready to get out of there. I took night classes. Me and my best friend, we took night classes. We were just ready to get out. And then I jumped on the slow train for a college career. So I went to a community college. I received my associate's degree, Associates of Science. So that took about two and a half years. And then I transferred to a major university. My original major was biology. I don't know what I was gonna do with that, but I was a bio major. I went to orientation. I, bought all my books. I went to the first week of classes, which, I don't specifically recall what they were, but it was, all the introduction to biology, very science heavy, I do recall. And that Thursday, I knew that this was not for me. This was not the path that I wanted to take. So that night, so it was 4 days into the semester that night, I withdrew from every single class and re-enrolled in all of the psychology courses that I could. And the next week, I was a psychology major. Again, I don't think I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that degree, but it just felt more comfortable for me. It felt like it was a better fit. So like I said, about halfway through, so this was probably 2010, I started to realize, like, hey, I'm gonna be graduating in 2 years. I should probably figure out what I'm going to be doing with this degree. And there's really not a lot you can do with an undergraduate degree in psychology. You really have to pursue further education with a master's or PhD. And so I was feeling very lost. And so the way that I found out about occupational therapy was I stumbled upon it while I was on another university's website looking into PT and dental hygiene programs. So I had this feeling that I wanted to work in the medical field in some way. I didn't really know what that looked like. I knew I wasn't that good with bodily fluids and blood, so I didn't feel like nursing was a good fit. So I was looking into allied health programs. I don't know if they're still called that, but at the time, like allied health programs. And so I was on the UT Health Science Center website, and right under PT was a tab that said OT. So I clicked on that, and from that moment, I don't think I ever looked back. I don't think I fully understood what OT was at the time, but there was a quote that I saw, and I don't know where I saw this, but I have it saved on my computer. And this is what, I don't think I've ever shared this with anyone, but what sealed my mind in terms of pursuing occupational therapy was a quote that said, PTs help people learn to walk, and OTs help people learn to dance. And that's not totally true, but because of my passion and my my love of dance, as I have shared a little bit on here, that quote spoke to me for some reason, and I decided to pursue OT from that moment. So like I said, that was probably around 2010, 2011. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline, the time frame on that. So as you can see, I was a little bit late to the game. I'm sure many applicants would have already known going into undergrad that that's what they wanted to do. So they would have already been volunteering, doing their OT observations to get into OT school. So I had a lot of catching up to do once I figured this out. So I would say probably for the majority of 2011 and then half of 2012 was when I did most of my observations. So in order to get into OT school, you have to have a certain amount of observations with an occupational therapist. I really only shadowed, and so I only shadowed and observed 2 different therapists. I shadowed at a pediatric occupational therapy clinic, which was oddly enough not very dissimilar to the first job I had. So I did observe at a pediatric outpatient peds clinic, and then I was able to find another therapist that worked outpatient rehab with one of the larger hospital networks in the town that I was living at the time. And she worked at 2 different clinics, so the same hospital network, but she worked at one downtown, and then she worked one up north in that same town. So it was actually good. It was beneficial to see the same job but at 2 different clinics. I don't remember how many hours I got total. I wish I could tell y'all, but it was probably the minimum. It was probably about 40 hours. Because again, I didn't have as much time to build up as many relationships and observations as I probably should have, because I was trying to get everything done before I graduated in 2012, so I could immediately start the program that next year. I did a little bit of other volunteering. I worked with a group called, I think, Kinetic Kids. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Great group. It was a dance program for children with disabilities. Again, that dance theme comes back. So I worked with them, and oh my gosh, that was so much fun to help choreograph and teach these awesome kids to dance, and we put on a recital. So, you know, find different ways like that to volunteer. I don't know if that made a difference in my application or not. but 2011, 2012, I'm working on getting these observations, getting in some volunteer. It's okay. You got to make yourself look good. It's, you know, you want to be altruistic, but you also have to make yourself look good on paper. If people were not trying to get into medical school and dental school and PT and OT school, I think a lot of these nonprofit organizations would be suffering and lacking in the volunteer department. Let's just be honest, okay? Sometimes you just gotta volunteer because that's what's expected of you. I don't know if that's a bad outlook or not. Because I was a little bit late to the game, I had to go back and take some prerequisites that weren't necessarily required for my degree, but that were required for the occupational therapy programs that I was applying to. So I think in my last semester, I ended up taking, and I think maybe in the summer, I was back in classrooms with freshmen, underclassmen, taking physics and biology. So I had taken all of my, most of my prerequisite courses at a community college. And so all of a sudden my last semester, I found myself in a classroom of like 450 people, which I had never experienced, like 450 freshmen trying to learn biology. So good Lord. You never really think that there's that much of a age gap and maturity gap from like 18 to 21, but let me tell you, there is. I graduated in December of 2012, but I submitted the applications to 3 different schools earlier in the year, so I think the deadline was probably November. I think I pushed it pretty close. Top recommendation: put your application in as early as possible. Don't wait, get in first. I really do think that the sooner they see you, they already start to pick who they think they want to interview and start the process. And if you're late, they may have already picked all, 55 people that they want to interview. So do not delay in submitting your application. So I'll be completely honest, I was not even acknowledged or invited to participate in the interview process for 2 of these schools that I applied to. I don't know why. I honestly feel like I was a pretty good applicant on paper. I was told that my grades were not good enough, even though I had a 4.0 GPA. I don't know how you can get any higher than that. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just telling you the situation. So that was a little bit discouraging to not be picked, at least for the interview process. I'm not sure what it looks like now, but there was an interview process. And I do want to clarify, at the time, so like I said, this would have been applying to begin OT school in 2013. At that time, it was not required to take the GRE. So I did not have to take the GRE in order to apply to grad school. I think you are required to take the GRE, but thank God I lucked out. I didn't have to take it. So I was accepted to complete an interview process at Texas Women's University, which was thrilling and nerve-wracking all at the same time. So this must have been the beginning of 2013, winter, sometime between January and March. I don't know the exact date of when the interview took place. But in the midst of applying to OT school and graduating, I had also gotten engaged. So I was planning my wedding in the midst of all of this. And it just so happened that I decided to look for a wedding dress at a boutique up here in Dallas. And I had already purchased the dress, and I was having my first fitting. So the weekend of my OT interview, I had scheduled the wedding dress alteration fitting. It just made sense to do everything in the same weekend so we didn't have to drive as much. In hindsight, that may not have been the best idea because I think my mind was a little bit preoccupied about like trying on my wedding dress and planning my wedding. But I knew that there was going to be a little bit of a gap between when school started and the wedding, so it just made sense to kind of plan the wedding at that time. My mom drove up there with me, and we stayed at a hotel. I remember I went shopping. I tried to find the perfect interview outfit. Oh my gosh, you know how it goes. You wanna look and feel your best on that day. So the interview, that whole day, I would say it was about a half a day experience of the actual interview process. It consisted of 2 components. So there was an interview, and then there was also a written exam. I did the written portion first, which I think in hindsight I'm glad. I don't know if I would have been able to focus after the interview to do that. But they divided everyone up into 2 groups. Some people did the interview first and then the written portion. I did the written exam first and then the interview. Now, to be honest, I remember the written portion much more than I do the actual interview. I have honestly blocked the interview from my mind. I couldn't tell you what went on in that room. I was so freaking nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not the best interviewer. I'm so much more self-aware now than I was back then. I think it would have been so different to do an interview now, but I was so naive, you know. I honestly, looking back on it, I really didn't still at that time know what occupational therapy was. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And throughout this whole process of observing, volunteering, applying, I still don't think I fully grasped and understood what OT was as a profession. And I don't know if that's like that for every profession, but you just don't know until you actually experience it and start it. So I just think my knowledge and expertise at that time of the interview was not the best. So it was a little bit traumatizing. I will say that. I don't know how it was for the other people on the other side of the interview process. It was probably not as traumatizing for them. But who knows? They could have been just as nervous as I was to interview a person. It's always funny to look back on that and see the reverse and think about what the actual interviewee was thinking, which I think you should. That's very important during an interview. But I was so self-absorbed at that time. I really only recall one question about research, and I don't even know how I responded. I remember that we ate at Schlotsky's afterwards. So after the interview, I went and had my dress fitting. It was fun. It was incredible. We drove back home, and then we just waited. That was one of the hardest things. One of the hardest parts is to wait and be patient. And then I received a letter that while they are interested in me as an applicant, I had been put on a wait list. I was not immediately accepted into the OT program at Texas Women's University. So basically what had to happen was that other applicants had to choose and decline their acceptance to the program in order for me to be admitted. So that was tough. I know I was disappointed because at that point you're kind of thinking like, what am I going to do now? I've just spent the last year and a half, 2 years pursuing this career, and now I'm not even going to get into the school. So I can't even imagine where my mind was at that time. And again, I don't remember the timeline of everything, but this would have been 2013 before April, because because I got married in April, and I already knew at that time that we would have been moving to DFW for me to start school, I think. Hello. Hello.
You there?
Yeah.
What's up?
I just have a question because I'm making a video on how I got into OT school.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember the timeline of everything, of like when I got accepted. Did I already know? I already knew before the wedding, right?
I'm trying to think, because I remember the day you called me at work. You're like, I'm going to OT school. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Because I couldn't remember. I felt like I was in Michael's and I got a call that I was accepted, but I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly.
No, I was going to say, wait, at Michael's or at...
No, I wasn't working there. I was just shopping there.
Oh, yeah, I remember thinking you were in a store or something.
Yeah. And I think we went to the interview sometime between January, or maybe the interview was before I graduated. I don't remember.
I think it was, because most schools like that, and then, but, you know, they let people know, and then people get accepted to another school that they really wanted, so they say no, you know, so it opens up spots.
Right. But I know I had already quit my job, though. I wasn't working anymore because I was just planning the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure you already knew, because otherwise you wouldn't have quit your job.
Yeah. That's...
You know, because it would have been like, what are you going to do if you don't go to OT school?
Right, yeah.
At work, and you said it really fast, like, I'm going to OT school. Yes, you were very excited.
I'm like, yes, my life.
I couldn't understand you. I was like, what? You go, I'm going to OT school. I go, what do you mean? I just got a call and they told me I'm accepted.
Yay.
In Dallas, yeah, at TWU. I was like, yay.
So I think I had my timeline a little bit off, but I'm glad I called my mom to kind of get her input and perspective from it. Looks like I had the interview before I graduated, and then I probably found out either January or February of 2013 that I was accepted. And as you heard her, she said I had quit my job. So there was about so March, April, May, June. There's a 4-month period where I didn't work or do anything, and we won't talk about that. So that is my journey and my story of applying and getting accepted into OT school. While OT is far from the perfect profession, I said at the beginning I was on the search for the perfect profession. It is far from that, but it has allowed me a comfortable life and the means to be involved in so many individuals' lives, more so than I ever would have thought possible. So that is my OT story. It is not exciting or glamorous by any means, but I do think it is realistic and representative of many of the experiences that most people go through. And going through that moment of figuring out what to pursue and how to apply and volunteer, and just that overwhelming feeling of not knowing what to do or how to do it, and not having that perfect story of knowing from the age of 5 that you wanted to be an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. You know, that's not most people's story. So just know that you are not alone in your experience. It's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to not know what's going to happen and to have that fear of not getting accepted, and know that you may not get accepted. As you saw, I had those moments that I didn't think I was going to be going to OT school, and I had no idea what I was going to do. Many people that I know and work with had to apply multiple times. It took years to get accepted, and then it took multiple times to pass the certification exam. You know, so don't let that stop you. If this is something that you truly want to pursue and are passionate about, you know, keep pursuing. If that's truly your professional goal. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that provided you some insight into into my OT journey and story. I'll continue to update y'all. I'm going to continue this series. I definitely want to continue this series and start with OT school first semester. Get some nice juicy stories about OT school and my experiences. Let me know if you have a name for the title of the series down below. So OT Chronicles, Tales of an OT, OT Storytime. I don't know yet what I'm going to call it, but I look forward to chatting with you in the next video. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.